The next person I would like to welcome to the stage is Zaheen Hussain, Millvale Sustainability Coordinator and Director of Sustainability at New Sun Rising, a native of Bangladesh and a Pittsburgh transplant by way of Connecticut. Zaheen serves as Millvale's Sustainability Coordinator. Supported through New Sun Rising and working with the Millvale EcoDistrict Collaborative, Zaheen is a shared community resource that helps advance Millvale's EcoDistrict's goals in the area of food, water, energy, mobility, air quality, and equity. Let us welcome Zaheen.
So again, my name is Zaheen Hussain, and I work as the Millvale Sustainability Coordinator. On July 5th, 2018, it came. Millvale flooded again. It was pretty traumatic. I remember standing on a bridge in the northern part of our town, watching the water come up with our Director of Public Works. And he, being a lifelong Millvalean, looked at me with a tear flowing down his eye, saying, "Z, I hate this. I hate it when it happens." This is someone who's lived in Millvale his whole life. He's seen floods come and go, and he's been a part of the process of picking the community back up and driving it towards the future. Now, it was my first time going through something like that, which I'm fortunate to be able to say, because that's certainly not the case for a lot of folks that live in the community. It was one of the craziest experiences I've ever had. But one thing I can guarantee you is that while everything leading up to and through the flood was awful and scary, and you have no idea what's going to happen next, how long it's going to last, if the rain's going to stop, what's going to happen after it stops, what I can tell you is that every single moment after the flood was one of the most incredible positive experiences that I've ever had the chance to be a part of. And there's something behind that. Watching a whole community come down onto the streets, neighbors helping neighbors, checking up on each other, helping older folks who might not be able to lift destroyed, damaged appliances out of their basements, hundreds to maybe even 1,000 volunteers walking through town through the following week, making sure that Millvale was able to recover as fast as possible. But to understand how that happens, to understand how a community knows how to click into action, not just in terms of first responders and municipal officials being able to respond through an emergency response plan, but seeing regular folks come together, there's a story behind that. And that story starts with some context. I always like providing context. So Millvale is a home rule municipality. So it has a mayor, a council, a police department, fire department. But Millvale is a 0.68 square mile town with about 3,700 people. So in scale, we're a lot more like a small college. And that's part of why EcoDistricts actually works so well for us, because we do have such a defined boundary of places where we're trying to work. It's a community of high need. It has a history of hard work. This image is one of the famous Max Ovanka murals in St. Nick's Catholic Parish, which is the oldest Croatian Catholic parish in the United States. And it's an example of what Millvale is. It's a community of hard work and faith. That hard work, with a history in industry, has had to change over time because industry abandoned Western Pennsylvania and a lot of parts of the United States, but it wreaked havoc on Millvale's economy. A community that once had close to 10,000 people, its population over 50 years shrunk by over 60% to about 3,700 people, which is where we are today. It's a community of high poverty with over a 26% individual poverty rate with a 45% youth poverty rate. So there are tremendous challenges that we're trying to work on seated in challenges around equity. And then there are the environmental damages left behind by the last 60 years of suburban development reaching out into the North Hills, taking away a lot of the permeable surfaces that once were absorbing water that no longer does. And don't get me wrong, Millvale has been in a floodplain since before humans lived anywhere near there, but the problems are certainly exacerbated by development that's taken place in the United States and in our communities over the last 50 years. But the floods of the mid-2000s served as a catalytic moment where the community came together and said, this is it. This is not what we're going to take anymore. We need a new way to think. And we're fortunate at that point, and I want to give a shout out to Evolve EA and Christine Mondor, for being tremendous leaders, not just in Millvale, but in the Pittsburgh region, who put forward the idea of a new way of thinking around community development, and that was EcoDistricts. And in 2012, we published our first EcoDistrict plan, but even for that, there was a process. We started with education, which is core to our value in creating a plan that speaks to the hopes, needs, and dreams of the community. We committed to a full year's worth of education through a grant that we received through the Pennsylvania DEP, where we were able to work with our community leaders, residents, nonprofit partners from around the region to really elevate the vocabulary around sustainability and sustainable economic development so that when the planning process started, the community was able to say yes to the things that made sense for it and no to the things that it didn't. Right? And that comes from a lot of lessons learned from neighboring communities and communities from around the country who didn't get that opportunity to share vocabulary with outside planning experts, developers who may have shown interest in their communities, only to feel the pain of that after. So then came engagement. And deep engagement, not just your one-off community meeting, right? I think someone was talking about that earlier where the same 5 people show up. They're usually the 5 people that have the most time on their hands, and you say, check that box, we got feedback. That's not feedback. So Millvale committed to block parties, education sessions, meetings at different times of day, unique strategies around going door to door, getting feedback person to person, in order to, again, make sure that we were able to incorporate as much of the community voice as possible as we create plans, as we create projects. And that's when we jump into planning. And a lot of you are planning experts and have heard about planning all week, so I don't need to get into the details of that. But I do want to speak to the value of incremental implementation. We all know kind of the running joke of the plan that's big vision, that you create, it's exciting, goes into a drawer, push it in, bring it back out 30 years later, it's dusty, and you say, oh yeah, we're supposed to do that. We committed to having one-off small projects that we started with that community members could really sink their teeth into, get their hands dirty with, many more metaphors, and become a part of what was starting to happen in order to build momentum. So, starting with just weeding and planting trees, starting community gardens, building a library, creating solar installations, really ramping up from an accessible point and then building towards a vision that people could wrap their minds around. And that leads to tribe building. Who's going to be there when you're not there? And how are you going to build that capacity so that as people get tired or move away, there's leadership that's there to follow the leaders who actually committed to bringing this kind of a process into a community like Millvale. And that started with tables like this, which once upon a time met in a library before it was finished. Oftentimes, although this looks like a summertime picture, when there was no heat in the building, but people gathered around and people said, hey, we're committed to meeting around our community. We're committed to figuring out what our vision is. And that led to projects and a philosophy within the EcoDistrict plan to address economic development through the lens of sustainability, with food, water, and energy as our first 3 planning areas. Food because we're a food desert. Water because you heard my spiel earlier. And energy, again, I think a lot of you saw the video earlier too, but for all the good reasons why a community should have a good energy plan, but really looking at energy, renewable energy, through the lens of resilience and how renewable energy can help communities become and stay more resilient through natural disasters like floods when the grid may go down. And through work, it built rooms like this, where more and more support was generated. And you can see Christine back there again. And we expanded our eco-district plan in 2016 through our iterative process, through our cycle of evaluation, and added air quality, mobility, and equity. Air quality, because air quality is still a major public health issue in the greater Pittsburgh area. We often come in ranked as having some of the worst air in the country, east of the Rockies. Some because of our geography, a lot because of transportation, and also industry that's still in the region that continues to emit high levels of pollution. Mobility, because we wanted Millvale to be accessible, not just within the community itself, but with the amenities and the development that's happening outside of our community as well. Because we know that as the economy starts to grow in Pittsburgh as it is right now, with the constraints that we have in size, as hard as we try, we may not be able to find jobs for all 3,700 folks, an opportunity for all 3,700 folks that live within the community. So how do we create ease in transportation to those job clusters that are developing outside of the community so that, again, we can create equity within the community, not necessarily 100% with development that's happening within, but also connecting to what's outside. And again, that leads to equity. With, again, the youth poverty rate that's over 45%, and with adult poverty still remaining within the community, how do you connect people to opportunity through education, through programming that creates opportunities for people to learn how to fit into a new emerging 21st century job? I'm losing my words, but you get it. Moving on. And again, committing back to the process. This is the signing of our EcoDistrict Collaborative Agreement with the president of the Millvale Community Development Corporation, the executive director of the Millvale Library, the executive director of one of our partner nonprofits, actually who gives me my paycheck, New Sun Rising, and our borough manager, Amy Rockwell, who brought along our borough council president, Jim, who couldn't be there in person. And again, committing as 4 institutions within the community to the plan that the community developed together with these 4 organizations. So this is what the plan looks like, with vision and projects in the areas of food, connecting people to fresh produce that's not otherwise available in town, water, creating green infrastructure, but also outreach within our northern suburbs, because we, through analysis, found that 90 to 95% of the stormwater within our community comes from outside of Millvale. Creating culture around water, clean drinking water. Energy, so renewable energy installations within town, but also driving home education around energy efficiency for folks who may not be able to directly access renewable energy quite yet. And also, renewable energy efficiency for folks who can as well. But also, again, access to opportunity. These are teens who are part of our Millvale Teen Solar Fellowship who are able to participate in a selective fellowship where they actually got paid to go to workshops where they learn about opportunities within the solar renewable industry, and got to follow and shadow installers when we were creating renewable energy installations within the community. And they got to interact with one of the installers who was once a coal miner who lost his job and is now raising his family through income generated by installations in renewable energy, right? And again, in a community that has so much challenge around access to opportunity, being able to unlock those ideas for our youth is tremendously valuable and really important in making sure that, again, we're creating a community that people aren't trying to escape. We're trying to create a community that people can find pride in and want to stay in. Air, looking at monitoring, making sure that, hey, we know that the Pittsburgh area has challenges around air quality, but what is Millvale's impact? How do we create data and create projects that are informed by data-driven solutions through monitoring? So comparing ourselves to other communities, with partnerships through the universities that are in the area, but also with citizen science, where residents were able to take home air quality monitors and become part of the study that we created. And then again, similar to our youth program in solar, there was our teen solar fellowship, or rather air quality fellowship, where our teens actually got to learn how air quality monitoring works. And they constructed this mobile air quality monitoring station that we're hoping to replicate as park benches and bus stops throughout our community and hopefully other communities as well. So mobility, again, creating culture on mobility, advocating for better bus routes, creating better bike infrastructure, which I've never seen bike infrastructure as amazing as here in Minneapolis. That culture isn't the same in Pittsburgh. That's a good clap. You can clap again. Yeah. I biked here today. We're creating that culture in Pittsburgh where we're transforming people's ideas and how mobility creates equity through choice. And then, of course, talking about equity. Again, youth programs, adult education programs, job training programs, programs that help people connect to help around the opioid issue that is definitely striking the community hard. A story that always comes to mind is a video that we were creating advertising adult education services that are provided through the Millvale Library. And the opening scene of that video was a mom and her child walking into the library together. Between seeing that first cut and having to publish the final cut, that child lost his mom to the opioid crisis. And it was one of the most striking moments in this part of my career where it really changed the meaning of the work that we were trying to do for a lot of us in the community to rethink, we talk about sustainability in so many different ways. How do we make sure that equity is really at the core to address those kinds of issues that are really ravaging our communities beyond just flooding, beyond just poor air quality, a lot of socioeconomic issues. And that comes with recognition. We've gotten a lot of awards for our planning. We've gotten a lot of awards for the implementation that we're doing. But our work is about action. Yes, that's a street in Millvale during Millvale Days, which is a multi-day street festival that we have. And yeah, we have wrestling on the street. And I love this picture. I didn't take it. I love this picture because it kind of shows to me where we are in our work. We've launched, we're flying through the air. We have a target. We see where we're trying to go. We don't quite know exactly how we're finally going to get there, but we're adjusting and twisting our body as we're getting there. As we work towards the area that we're going to land. And we hope that we stick the landing. But back to the flood that I spoke about earlier at the beginning, much like the mid-2000s when those floods served as a catalytic moment in the community, with a lot of changes over the last 13, 14 years, there's now a renewed sense of action. This was taken during the second heaviest rainfall ever in the history of Pittsburgh, which happened just last month. And I was walking around the community just seeing what the stream was doing. And lo and behold, there were other community members made of people who were part of the original EcoDistrict team and new neighbors who are becoming excited about the work that we're doing and are reinvigorated in the work that we're doing because this is happening right now. That was the second heaviest rainfall in the history of Pittsburgh. We're currently in the middle of the rainiest year ever recorded in the history of the state, in the history of the city. And it's important that we highlight those issues, and it's important that we draw in new people to make sure that we continue to build leadership within the community. And that comes with a number of philosophies, right? Thinking globally, acting locally. We say that a lot. But lead with issues that are important to the community. Oftentimes as planners, developers, we think we know, but we really often don't. Ask questions. Do something. Again, planting trees, picking up weeds, that's a start. And again, for communities that have the kinds of challenges that Millvale does, anything counts. For us, it's about jobs, and it's about, again, in Western Pennsylvania, about helping people rethink what the opportunity is. I like to think about this a lot. Could you imagine if Calvin Coolidge ran a campaign in 1918 around saving big horse and buggy jobs, right? Investing in fossil fuels right now in Western Pennsylvania is a lot like working towards saving big horse and buggy. And you know what? There are a lot of transferable skills in fossil fuels that can be applied to renewable energy. How do we create public policy and momentum towards that kind of global thinking? Through local action. But most of all, build community. Because they're the people who are going to be there for you when you need them the most. When that flood surely comes and you're in the deepest part of despair and you need a neighbor to help you lift your washing machine out of your basement. Thank you.